Today, we are going to install VS Code with Copilot, which will provide AI capabilities. However, before we start, make sure that we log into our Kali Linux with a non-root username. I have run into an issue with using root account. Even though we can install VS Code root, when it comes to authenticating to GitHub to set up Copilot, I run into issues with it. And I realize it's much more smoother and easier to do with a non-root user account. We can now head over to we can now head over to visualstudio.com and then download the .deb or the Debian version of Visual Studio. Within our download folder, we should have the file to install. We will use the dpkg package. We will use this. We will then use this command to install the package. After installation, we can run VS Code either from the menu like this or from a command line. Just type in code. And now we should have VS Code up and running. Now let's proceed to set up our Copilot. You need to have at least a GitHub account for this to work. We go to sign in, and this will pop up a GitHub. You need to have at least a GitHub account to have the Copilot integration set up. Once authenticated, we can click on continue, and we'll just click on open link. And we can see at the bottom left, getting Copilot ready. Okay, it looks like it is ready. So to confirm that, we can first of all click on account, and we should see our account is connected to Copilot. At the top here, we can start Copilot from here if it's not open. We can open as a chat or quick chat, or even configure completion. At the left side here, if we take a look at Copilot, we have few options here that make the AI integration much more better and smooth. You can see by default it is using GPT 4.1. If you click on the arrow drop down, you see a whole bunch of additional models that you can pick from. We can even add premium models if you so choose to pay extra money, or we can click on manage models. If we click on that, we'll see this drop down here, which we can select any and then add in additional model. So for instance, if you want to bring your own Anthropic, you can click on it and then you enter your API key. If you want to use, let's say, Open Router, you can click on Open Router and you can enter your API key for Open Router. If you want to get out of this, just click Escape on your keyboard and then it will vanish. Here, we can chat with Copilot. But if we click on the Ask drop down, we actually have few additional options that we can work with Copilot. So if we click on here at the drop down from Ask, we actually have different modes that that Copilot can operate with. We have an option for edit and even run it in agent mode. This is far beyond the scope of this video. We can discuss this in the future. We can cover some of these modes in the future. Okay, we can even add a context, or if you want to add an extension or chat with an extension, we can use the add symbol. But for now, to ensure that we have our Copilot working, let's just type in something. So let's say, hi. So we're just saying that, hi, tell me some of the things you can do. And then just hit send. And we can see our Copilot is working with GPT 4.1. So let's clean up VS Code a bit so you can walk through some of these get started phases on your own time. I wanted to just have the Copilot integrated, but let's close this out and we can open terminal. So we can work on a terminal right from VS Code, and that is one of the benefits. Another benefit, another benefit of VS Code is it comes packed with a ton of extensions, so we can do a lot of things right from VS Code. We can do a lot of things within VS Code without even stepping out of it to a terminal. Okay, so here we can just, oh, oops. So here we can type anything, navigate, and then just type everything from here. If we want to switch over to root, we can just use su space dash and then put in the password of root, and we are root. All right, so we can do everything from VS Code from the terminal. If we want to add in extensions, which we will do in the near future with some of our if we want to add in extensions, which we'll do in our near future, some of our activities, there's an extension option here on the left side. If we click on it, we can search for any extension that we want to. So for instance, if let's say we want to use continue dev extension, we just type in continue dev and it is down here. We can click on continue dev and then just click on install and then set that up too. Okay, so these are some of the basic features of VS Code. Now back to Copilot. Let's assume now back to Copilot and let's do something much more productive. So let's quickly walk through a practical scenario as a red team operator. So here I am giving a prompt to Copilot about. So let's walk through a practical scenario as a red team operator. So here I have a prompt that says you are a senior red team operator. You are So let's walk through a practical scenario as a red team operator. So let's walk through a practical scenario as a red team operator, and you would want to take advantage of Copilot to help you in writing a payload or a command. I mean, so let's go through a practical scenario as a red team operator that needs the help of Copilot to be much more efficient in writing a payload or developing a malware or a tool. So in this case, I have this prompt. You are a senior red teamer running a red team operation. Tell me more about the NT Query System Information API and how it can be used for enumerating information about a Windows system. And let's send that and see what happens with Copilot. And we can see within few seconds, Copilot is giving us more detailed information about this particular API. We will dive deeper into some of these things in the future because at this moment, we are just setting up our environments, and then we'll eventually be using some of these when it comes to tool development or anything when it comes to offset operation. But we can see Copilot gave us a good amount of information about this API, okay, and even giving us a sample code, simplified example in C code. Okay, if we want to go deep, dig deeper, it has more, things for us here. So let me know if you want code samples or more details on specific information class. Okay, so we can go further and then give more instructions and then have it actually maybe write our code for us. So we can see that within few seconds, Copilot has given us a good amount of information about this particular API. Now we are not going to dive, we are not going to go through this, and you can see within few seconds, Copilot has given us a good amount of information about this particular API. Going through this API is beyond the scope of this video. Okay, in the future, we will tackle these individually and then see how we can leverage AI or even Copilot in building or developing a toolkit or building a malware. All right, but for now, let's step through some of the responses. But for now, let's step through quickly the responses that But for now, let's step through the response from Copilot very quickly. So here is giving us information about this particular API, which is a native Windows system call provided by Windows NT family. All right. It also gives us the function signature of this particular API. All right. And more detailed breakdown of this function. Okay. And then it goes through to even tell us red teamers and security tools often use this particular API for some of these reasons. All right, which we can actually do a follow-up and then maybe have it elaborate more on any of these. For instance, we can say maybe Copilot should write a code for enumerating running processes. Okay, in fact, let's copy that and see if we can have Copilot do that. All right, so then we go down and it even gives us an example of enumerating processes. Okay, but maybe this may not be enough. We can ask for a complete code without any error and then even specify a language or assembly language we want it to run into, right? So, and then it gives us why we want to use this particular API, right? So one of the biggest reasons is, say, bypass some user mode API hooks. If you understand how EDR solutions work, they hook to processes So when you are, when you run your malware or your payload, most of the time we are maybe creating process. And that is where sometimes, EDR solutions are able to see our activities and then kill it. All right. So it's giving us a reason why, this is good to use to bypass user mode API hooks. Access to detailed system information. It actually gives us much more information about the system. All right. And it also gives us caution. So these are all good things that would help you as a red teamer to be much more efficient. All right. So let's say we want to do a follow up. Let's tell Copilot to write a complete code using the to enumerate processes on the system in, let's say, C++. Okay, so let's test out this follow-up prompt. So write a complete program in C++ using this API to enumerate running processes on a Windows 10 system. Okay, let me remove the S. And we actually reinforces that Copilot should avoid making any mistakes and ensure the code is complete code and not just a sample. Because sometimes the AI will just give us a sample if we do not force it to write the complete code. Let's see if this works, or at least we get a code to start with. And you have to understand that this AI, and we have to understand that this is not bulletproof. We can't just copy this and it'll work out of the box. We may have to end up tinkering and then do follow-ups and then have some of the code like, rewritten or fix some issues. However, this is something that could have taken someone, this is something that would typically take a red teamer or a tool developer hours to write. And within just few seconds, we had an AI write at least about 90% of it for us. Again, this may not work out of the box, or sometimes it does. I have had a situation where the AI wrote the entire thing for me, and then when I copied and pasted it and then built the tool, it actually worked completely. Sometimes, too, you may have some errors, and then you have to keep working with the AI, giving screenshots of where the error is, and it will guide you through fixing them. But let's take a look at something that it just wrote completely for us. All right. If we don't understand here, it's giving us comments in the code that we can review. We can even ask it to give us more comments within our code, but you can see it is well structured. Again, the goal here is not to go through the code itself, but to showcase or demonstrate how practical we can have this tool, run our code, write a code for us. Okay, fantastic. So once we are satisfied, we can copy this and then have this built or tested out within. So once, so the next step, will typically be to copy the code and then create a program and then test it out and then build and see if it works. So this is where we will stop. So this is where we will leave everything at. And then in the future, we can dig much more deeper into some of these capabilities using AI in coding, using AI in building a tool, using AI in developing a tool, using AI in developing an offensive security tool.